Imagine waking up one morning without that tightness in your chest, without that constant whisper, what if, that follows you wherever you go. The idea seems almost revolutionary, but it's not magic. It's a transformation rooted in ancient wisdom. For over 2.5 millennia, Buddhist teachings have offered tools not only to soothe fear, but to reshape how we relate to it. Fear doesn't have to be your ruler. It can become your teacher. What if you could begin to see fear not as a wall, but as a doorway? One of the first keys is accepting that nothing is permanent. Our culture often tells us otherwise. Cling to what you have, strive for stability, secure the future. But deep down, everything, from joy to sorrow, from loss to gain, is in flux. When we resist this truth, we suffer not only because of what's happening, but because we refuse that it might change. So we tighten our grip on people, on results, on expectations, and fear of losing or never getting is born. But when we start to really understand the impermanence of all things, even our fears, we begin to loosen that grip. We see that today's fear may feel overwhelming, but tomorrow something will shift. Maybe not in the external circumstances, but in us. Our heart, our courage, our outlook, these can change. I remember talking with a friend who lost her job unexpectedly. The fear she felt wasn't just about money. It was about identity, about what people would think, about what this meant for her future. She held on to what was lost until she couldn't. One quiet afternoon, she just let herself mourn and then allowed change to come. She took stock, skill sets, passions, what she could do rather than what she had lost. Over months, she built something new, not the same, but something richer. That was embracing impermanence in action. Once we accept that nothing stays the same, the next step is to see the illusion that fear often is. Most fear is a story. What if this happens? What if that fails? We spin dramas in our minds about futures yet unwritten. But stories aren't facts. When you stand at the edge, literally or metaphorically, your heart races, your senses betray you. But are you really in danger? Not often. It's the mind playing a movie of worst-case outcomes. Here's another example. A writer I know had a big opportunity, but felt paralyzed by fear of rejection. She imagined every possible way she could fail, every harsh judgment, every mistake. She delayed starting. Then one day, she forced herself to send the first draft. The responses weren't perfect, but also they weren't catastrophic. Most were helpful, and she discovered something surprising. The fear had been larger than reality. Once she saw fear for what it was, a pattern of thoughts, expectations, maybe old wounds, its grip loosened. She could act. Mindfulness becomes essential here. Without it, fear takes over. Worrying about the future, regretting the past, feeling overwhelmed by what might come. Mindfulness invites us to pause, to breathe, to notice, to observe. When fear arises, notice the racing heart, the breath, the tightness. Don't fight, don't run away. Just notice. Over time, by observing without being swept in, we realize a simple truth. Fear doesn't define us. Observing it, we see it's temporary. Moreover, suffering, the thing we normally want to avoid, is universal. Everyone suffers loss. Everyone feels anxiety. Recognizing this doesn't diminish our pain. It isolates it somewhat, helps us see we're not alone in the shared human experience. Fear becomes less strange, less embarrassing, less overwhelming. Compassion arises, not just external compassion, but compassion for ourselves. It's okay, I feel this, many feel this. That shift alone can break through shame or isolation. Attachment, clinging to outcomes, to identity, to what should have been, is deeply connected to fear. If we believe that lasting security or happiness resides in something outside us, our job, our relationship, our reputation. Then the possibility of loss looms endlessly. But letting go of attachment doesn't mean apathy or disengagement. It means caring without depending on results, loving without making that love the sole anchor of your worth, striving without being destroyed if things don't turn out just right. For instance, a teacher's parent expected certain achievements. The student worked hard, not necessarily because they love learning, but to satisfy expectations. That pressure bred anxiety. What if I fail? What if I disappoint? When they gradually shifted their focus, doing what they loved, learning for joy, seeing worth beyond approval, fear didn't vanish overnight, but its weight lessened. Life felt more spacious, more alive. Patience is often overlooked. In our instant gratification era, we want results now, answers, stability, comfort. But much of what transforms us, confidence, wisdom, resilience, comes only through time and setbacks. Fear thrives in impatience. When we demand certainty, when we can't wait for things to unfold. Learning patience means tolerating discomfort, uncertainty, not knowing. It means allowing fear to exist without letting it force decisions. Imagine planting a tree. You water it, tend it, but you don't expect it to be fully grown in a day. You accept seasons, spring, winter. The roots grow slowly. The tree weathers storms. Its eventual strength comes from enduring. Our inner growth is similar. Every setback, every moment of fear is fertilizer, putting it all together. Instead of resisting fear, we transform our relationship with it. We accept impermanence. See fear's story as separate from fact. Observe what arises through mindfulness. Understand suffering is shared. Let go of attachment and practice patience. These aren't steps you tick off once, but habits, ways of being. Over time, you begin to move from fear as something that blocks to fear as something that teaches. Let's go even deeper, because fear doesn't just vanish once you know these 6 Buddhist lessons. Real life is messier. We can understand impermanence, illusion, mindfulness, suffering, attachment, and patience in theory. But how do we live them out day by day when the unexpected happens? This is where practice meets reality. Think about relationships. Fear shows up constantly there. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. A close friend of mine once shared how she always tested her partner's love by asking endless what-if questions. What if you meet someone better? What if I change and you don't love me anymore? Those questions weren't about the partner. They were fear's voice echoing inside her. Over time, with therapy and mindfulness practice, she realized she was clinging to the illusion of permanence in love. She wanted guarantees where there could never be any. Love, like life, is fluid. By learning to stay in the present and appreciate what was real today, she gradually released the constant fear of tomorrow. We also see fear in our careers. Imagine a person working a stable but unfulfilling job, terrified of change. The fear says, if I leave, I might fail. If I try something new, I might lose security. But the truth is, staying stuck is also a kind of loss. Here's where impermanence teaches us that nothing remains stable forever, not even the safe choice. Companies restructure, industries evolve, and circumstances shift. The more we resist, the more painful it becomes. Letting go of attachment doesn't mean recklessly quitting your job, but it does mean loosening your grip on the belief that stability equals safety. Sometimes, the leap into uncertainty becomes a path toward real growth. Another powerful example comes from fear of public speaking. Many of us know that sudden rush, sweaty palms, racing heart, blank mind. But when you see fear as illusion, you realize most of the audience isn't judging you as harshly as you think. In fact, many of them are too focused on themselves. When I first began speaking, I would write every word down, terrified of forgetting. Over time, I learned mindfulness before stepping on stage, breathing slowly, noticing the sensations without judgment. I would silently tell myself, this fear is just energy. I can use it. And the moment I accepted its presence, the fear shifted into excitement. Here's the core insight. Fear doesn't always disappear, but your relationship with it can transform. You no longer run from it or fight it. You learn from it. Fear becomes a signal, pointing you toward where growth is possible. If you're afraid of starting a new project, maybe that's the exact direction to go. If you're afraid of being vulnerable, maybe honesty is a practice you need. And here's where patience returns. Change is slow. You won't master these lessons overnight. Think of it like learning an instrument. The first notes are clumsy. Your hands ache. You wonder if you'll ever be good. But with practice, the music emerges. Life's the same. You meet fear. You practice presence. You practice letting go. Each encounter is rehearsal for freedom. At the heart of it all, Buddhism reminds us, fear isn't the enemy. Fear is part of being human. The problem isn't fear itself. It's how we respond. If we cling, we suffer. If we resist, we suffer. But if we see, accept, and release, then fear becomes less a chain and more a teacher. So here's the challenge for you. The next time fear shows up, instead of asking, how do I get rid of this? Try asking, what is this fear trying to show me? That simple question can transform your entire relationship with it. Now, let's take these ideas into the bigger picture of life. Fear isn't just about personal struggles like jobs, relationships, or public speaking. It also shows up in society, in our culture, in the way we see the world. Look at how media works today. News headlines often magnify fear. Economic collapse, climate disasters, political instability. Every scroll on your phone can trigger a new wave of anxiety. But here's the truth. While awareness of global issues is important, letting fear dominate our daily state of mind doesn't help. If anything, it paralyzes us. This is where Buddhist patience and mindfulness become revolutionary. Instead of drowning in fear about problems too big for one person to solve, we learn to ground ourselves. Yes, climate change is real. Yes, the economy has challenges. But how will fear help? It won't. What helps is calm, compassionate action. Think about the people who start small community projects, plant trees, support local charities. They know they can't fix everything, but they also know fear is an excuse to freeze. A story that stays with me is about a man in Japan who, after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami, started cooking meals for survivors in his neighborhood. He had lost family himself, and the fear of aftershocks was constant. But instead of letting that fear crush him, he chose to act. His calm presence and patience gave strength to others. This is a living example of how Buddhist lessons manifest in times of collective crisis. Acceptance of impermanence, compassion in action, and patience with uncertainty. Fear also shows up in how we imagine our future. Many young people today fear not being successful enough by a certain age. There's pressure to achieve, to buy a house, to have a perfect career and family, all by some invisible deadline. And when that doesn't happen, fear whispers, you're falling behind. But this is attachment in disguise. Clinging to society's timeline, clinging to an identity that may not even match who we truly are. Letting go doesn't mean giving up ambition. It means redefining success as growth, learning, and alignment with your authentic self, not just meeting someone else's expectations. And here's a powerful perspective. Fear can be a mirror. It shows you where your deepest values lie. If you fear losing loved ones, it shows that love is central to your life. If you fear failing at your work, it shows you care deeply about your contribution. When seen this way, fear isn't just a problem, it's a compass. The question becomes, will you follow that compass with courage or let it lock you in place? So in the bigger scheme, Buddhist wisdom isn't about escaping the world or shutting down fear. It's about engaging with life fully, without being enslaved by anxiety. Imagine if more of us could see fear not as a threat, but as an invitation to grow. Society itself would shift from panic-driven decisions to compassionate, mindful action. At the end of the day, fear belongs to all of us. No one escapes it. But by practicing these lessons, we can stop seeing fear as an enemy and start using it as fuel for transformation, both personally and collectively. As we move toward the conclusion of this journey, let's pause and ask, what if fear has never been the villain we thought it was? What if fear is simply a messenger, pointing us toward the areas of life where we are meant to grow? Think about it. Every breakthrough, every moment of courage, every transformation you've ever had began with fear. It was there when you tried something new, when you admitted the truth to someone, when you risked failure for the sake of something bigger. One of my favorite examples comes from a young entrepreneur I once met. She confessed that every step of building her business was filled with fear. Fear of running out of money, fear of disappointing her family, fear of the unknown. But instead of waiting until she felt ready or fearless, she carried her fear with her. She said something profound. I realize courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about walking with fear and still choosing to act. That is exactly what these Buddhist lessons are guiding us toward, not erasing fear, but transforming how we live with it. So let's tie everything together. Impermanence teaches us that fear is temporary. It will pass. Seeing illusion shows us that fear often lives in our imagination, not in reality. Mindfulness allows us to pause, breathe, and notice instead of reacting blindly. Understanding suffering reminds us that fear is universal. We are never alone in it. Letting go of attachment frees us from clinging to outcomes that only intensify our anxiety. And patience. Patience gives us the strength to face discomfort, to wait, to grow, to allow life to unfold at its own rhythm. If you carry these 6 lessons into your life, something powerful will shift. You'll still feel fear, of course, because that's human. But fear will no longer hold the steering wheel. You will, and that changes everything. Here's the truth. Life doesn't ask us to be fearless. It asks us to be brave, to walk into uncertainty with open eyes, to love even when it might hurt, to speak our truth even when voices tremble. That's the real practice. And when you start to see fear as a guide instead of prison, your whole life opens up. So here's my invitation to you. The next time fear knocks, don't slam the door. Open it. Invite it in. Ask what it has to teach you. And then, when you've listened, step forward anyway. Because freedom doesn't come from eliminating fear. It comes from living fully, even with fear by your side. And if these lessons have sparked something in you, let this not be the end. Keep practicing. Keep reflecting. Keep showing up for your own life. Because the world doesn't need more people trapped by fear. It needs more people who are free enough to live with courage, compassion, and clarity.